What is up, boyos?
Oh, boyos.
And welcome to Last Week in Games, where everything is video games. And we've got a big week today. Today we are talking about the week of September 18th. And there was a lot of news, and particularly one big piece of news. And that big piece of news was all of the leaked documents that came out of the FTC trial with Activision Blizzard Microsoft buyout. So that's what we're going to be talking about mostly on this show. But we do have a couple, what we lovingly call titties. These are some tidbits of news that we feel are worth mentioning. The first titty is Ubisoft has announced that developer Massive Entertainment is working on The Division 3. Now, to me, this is not like surprising news by any means. The Division 2, very popular game. Division 1, also incredibly popular. So the fact that they're making a third one, not a surprise. Very cool that that they announced it. I would assume that if they're at the point where they feel like they can announce it, that it should come out in the next couple of years. But they did say it's early development. This team is also working on a couple other games. I know like Star Wars Outlaws is one of the big ones that they're working on. So it sounds as though that they've kind of split Massive Entertainment into like multiple teams to start working on multiple projects and get these things out. That's very cool. I like the Division 2. I thought it was pretty fun. I'm kind of growing tired of these sort of games as service games, you know, like your Destinies, your Divisions. I just feel like they take up a lot of time. They use the same tricks as gambling to like keep you invested. But like, if that's what people want to do, they want to come home and play these kind of games and grind it out, go for it. I'm just kind of over it though. I'd much rather play like a Baldur's Gate or an F-Zero 99. And let me tell you, I've been playing the shit out of F-Zero 99, and that game is actually truly, truly incredible. This is a totally weird transition, but it's got to be said. This is the game I've been playing the most throughout the week. Last week, I sort of mentioned it. I only played like maybe an hour of it last week, but throughout the week, this has been my game. I have been so enthralled by it. There's not a ton going on in the game, but like they've managed to make this gameplay loop that is just so compelling. The sky bridges and learning the strats of how to use the sky bridges and when to use the sky bridges. You collect these like gold beads, which fill up that yellow meter that you see there in the top right. And when that's filled up, you get a sky bridge. So there's like a strategy where you want to kind of stay back at the start of the match so you fill up your yellow dots more. And your boost is also up there in the top right. That bar up there depletes as you use your boost, but not only does it deplete when you use your boost, that is also your health meter. So if you run out of that, you die. So you have to look out for obstacles and other players. When other players hit you, you lose some of that meter. And when you use boost, you run out of that meter. So that little gameplay element alone is just infectious and just so fun. And then all of the, gamey elements of it, they have like Grand Prix every 2 hours. They have mini Prix. They have like different game modes. And my biggest hope for this game is that they expand upon it and keep adding stuff to it. You know, I don't think this is like going to be Nintendo's main thing that they're going to focus on for the rest of their lives. Obviously, like it's just sort of a quick thing that they could sort of ship out into the ether to hold us over on F-Zero, because we keep asking for an F-Zero. So they're like, here you go, here's an F-Zero game. But I absolutely adore this game, and I highly encourage anyone who has a Switch and has Switch Online to just give it a shot. It's a ton of fun and totally worth it. All right, sorry, that was a total tangent, but I had to go on that tangent because I love that game and I just think it's wonderful. Next titty here, and this would normally be a news story, but we have so much news with Xbox that I had to put this in the titties, and it has to do with the Xbox as well. The UK initially denied the acquisition of Activision from Xbox. Well, now that we've seen a bunch of other markets approve it, including the United States, the UK has gone back on that, and they have retroactively approved the acquisition of Activision in the UK. These were questions that we were having after the acquisition in the United States. How are they going to make this work in the UK? Because they got denied there. And they would have had to just operate as independent unities there, I guess. But ultimately, the UK looked at what happened here and they said, there's no fighting this. It's going to happen. Let's just let it happen. Is this a good or bad thing? I don't know. I think this kind of cannibalization of the gaming industry that we're seeing currently is going to be a huge detriment to the gaming community in the coming years. I really do feel that way. I think right now we're all excited. Oh, yay. All of the Call of Duties are going to come to Game Pass. Woohoo. But, you know, what I've already started seeing happening with Xbox is they're buying these companies and then they're not really doing anything with these companies. They're just buying them, releasing what they were already working on, and then what happens to them? We get a game here or there. You know, we got like a Sea of Thieves from Rare, which is not exactly what we wanted to see from Rare, but it is what we got. They acquired Bethesda, and we've gotten a couple games from Bethesda, but like, what does that look like in a few years? And we do have some of those answers of what's going to happen with Bethesda that we're going to talk about in a moment. But my biggest concern is that we acquire things like Activision, we acquire things like ZeniMax, which is like, you know, Bethesda. And a lot of these studios I feel are going to just be thrown onto different projects, you know, maybe move to Halo, move to something else. And then also just trying to develop as many games as Activision was making and ZeniMax was making and Xbox was making all on its own. Now it's all under one big umbrella. We're not going to see all of those games that we used to see from these different companies, right? Like Activision would put out like several games in a year. Bethesda would put out a couple games in a year, and Xbox would put out a couple games in a year. But Xbox is going to just continue to put out a couple games in a year. They might start putting out a few more, but like I just have a feeling that some of the smaller studios that are underneath Activision that, you know, we don't really talk about a whole lot, like Toys for Bob or something like that. What happens to those guys? You know what I mean? So there's that whole aspect, and then there's the other aspect of monopolies and what happens if Xbox sort of monopolizes the whole gaming industry. Right now, its only real competitors, PlayStation and Nintendo, but Microsoft has so much more capital than both of those things and is slowly taking away a lot of products from those companies. I know we've seen the agreements that every Call of Duty is going to come to Nintendo, blah, 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 blah. But in these leaked articles that we're going to talk about in just a moment, we've also seen that almost every Bethesda game is no longer coming to PlayStation. We saw it with Starfield already. And that is just what's going to keep happening. And Call of Duty, they may make these agreements that Call of Duty is going to come to PlayStation and Nintendo for the next 10 years, but what happens in 10 years? And I know it's hard to think about things 10 years from now, but I think it's important to, because in the grand scheme of things, games take like 5 to 6 years to make anyway, so that's really only 2 games away when you think about it like that. And I don't think Xbox is going to continue with that sort of practice. Let's keep it on every platform. Why would they? It doesn't make much sense on a business level for them to do that. And we've already seen that they agree with my sentiment there, because every Bethesda game is no longer coming to every console. So these are just a few things to be worried about. And then the fact that if they own the entire market, they also get to set their price point at whatever they want it to be. They get to create the quality of the games that are coming out. any smaller developer has to work under the thumb of Xbox if Xbox is the only company left. And I know this is very like doom and gloom. How could that happen? But if we go back just 10 years, how could Xbox buy Activision? You know what I mean? Like that is a crazy sentiment to have. And 10 years from now, who knows? They could be buying Nintendo. They could be buying PlayStation. They could be buying Valve. And these are things that we've seen in the documents that we're going to be talking about here in a moment. So I don't think it's that doom and gloom to have these kind of thoughts, and just to keep them in the back of your mind. I don't think we're at that point quite yet, but we are getting dangerously close to that point. That we're going to see a monopoly. And at the very least, we're already kind of at a duopoly with PlayStation and Microsoft. Luckily, we have Nintendo to balance things out, and things like Steam to kind of balance those things out. But we get closer and closer to those kind of scary words like monopoly and duopoly every year, it seems. Well, speaking of all that, I had mentioned a few times in that previous diatribe that I just went on that Microsoft had casually discussed buying Nintendo or Valve in an email. A bunch of leaked emails and documents have been released by the FTC because of the trial that took place trying to prevent Microsoft from buying Activision. And one of the things that we saw was an email from CEO Phil Spencer talking about trying to buy Nintendo or Valve. This is an article from Kotaku, written by Ashley Barden. Microsoft casually discussed buying Nintendo or Valve in leaked email. A leaked 2020 email from Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer reveals his sustained interest in buying either Nintendo or Steam developer Valve. The Northern District Court of California released the email along with many other documents from the Federal Trade Commission versus Microsoft lawsuit that earlier this year unsuccessfully attempted to block Microsoft's proposed merge with Call of Duty publisher Activision. Microsoft first made a pass at acquiring Nintendo back in 1999 when it gave the Zelda developer an offer that caused the execs to, quote, laugh their asses off for at least an hour. Bloomberg reported this back in 2021. Microsoft has also been rumored to want to nab Valve in the past, though in 2018, Valve co-founder and former 80s Microsoft employee Gabe Newell supposedly told a fan it wasn't selling. In the 2020 email, Spencer tells Microsoft Chief of Marketing Chris Coppola and Executive Vice President Takeshi Nomoto that, quote, Nintendo is the prime asset for us in gaming. Quote, I've had numerous conversations with the leadership team of Nintendo about tighter collaboration and feel like if any US company would have the chance with Nintendo, we are probably the best option. Nintendo is sitting on a big pile of cash, end quote. The rest of the email thread between the three executives discuss Microsoft's ultimately snubbed attempt to buy social media platform TikTok in 2020 and other potentially lucrative buys, including Warner Bros. Interactive and Elder Scrolls developer ZeniMax, which Microsoft absorbed back in 2021. Despite this, Spencer acquiesces that he doesn't see an angle to a near-term mutually agreeable merger of Nintendo and Microsoft. Quote, I don't think a hostile action would be a good move, so we are playing the long game. But our board of directors has seen the full write-up on Nintendo and Valve, and they are fully supportive of either if opportunity arises, as am I. At this point, getting Nintendo would be a career moment, Spencer says. Quote, it's just taking a long time for Nintendo to see that their future exists off their own hardware. A long time. Smiley face. End quote. Oh, man. Putting a smiley face in that email is wild. In 2022, to sweeten its controversial planned Activision merger and possibly to improve relations with Spencer's apparent crown jewels, Microsoft made a 10-year promise to release Call of Duty on Nintendo consoles, and it swore to keep releasing the shooter on Steam. Kotaku reached out to Microsoft for comment. It appears they have not gotten back. I almost want to say this is a non-story. It's not a non-story. The fact that they want to buy them is insane. The fact that they've tried to purchase both Valve and Nintendo is insane. But also at the same time, it's a non-story. Of course, Microsoft wants to buy Nintendo. Of course, Microsoft wants to buy Valve. Of course, Microsoft wants to buy Sony. Like, these would be huge gets for any of these companies to purchase any of each other. And the fact that Phil Spencer was like, I don't think this would work. Like, he basically explicitly said, like, this is not going to work. And also, the fact that they were trying to do this back in 2020, this was like the release of Animal Crossing, which Nintendo was at its peak at that point, you know, like sales of the Nintendo Switch were insane at that point. So obviously that wasn't going to happen. And it's good it didn't, because I think more companies on the market is always a good thing. If Sega announced a new console tomorrow, I think that would be great for the gaming industry. You know what I mean? It could be anybody. Like, anybody can get into the gaming industry, and I think that would be great for the market. We also got a list of games that are reportedly coming to Xbox Game Pass, and we also got the number of money that those games and those studios will be paid to put those games onto Game Pass. And I found this pretty interesting. So here is a list of the estimated price for these games to be on Game Pass. Lego Star Wars, $35 million. Dying Light 2, $50 million. City Skylines is unknown. Red Dead Redemption 2, $5 million per month. Dragon Ball The Breaker, $20 million. Just Dance, $5 million. Return to Monkey Island, $5 million. Wreckfest 2, $10 to $14 million. Baldur's Gate 3, $5 million. Come on, no shot. Gotham Knights, $50 million. Assassin's Creed Mirage, $100 million. Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, $250 million. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, $300 million. Mortal Kombat 1, $250 million. Grand Theft Auto 5, $12 to $15 million per month. Blood Runner, $5 million. And Net Crisis Glitch Busters, $5 million. There is some more information that I would like to know about this. I would like to know what that price point, like how long does that put your game onto Game Pass before they need to re-up and repay you? Do you also get more money if more people download your game? I would be curious to know that. Like, Baldur's Gate getting $5 million when it's obviously like the biggest game of the year is an undersell based on, you know, probably the estimates that they didn't realize that this game was going to be massive, you know? So if that game got $5 million, but then like several million downloads off of Game Pass, would they get some sort of boost from that? I don't know. So there is a bit of information that's missing here, but fascinating nonetheless. That's a lot of money being thrown around just to keep Game Pass up and running. Makes a lot of sense though, for games like Grand Theft Auto 5, $12 to $15 million per month. That's probably worth it to put on Game Pass. Although, isn't Grand Theft Auto 5 free to play anyway? So kind of weird. But to see Suicide Squad on there for $250 million, that would be super interesting if that game came out day and date, especially considering we just talked about how they had considered buying Warner Brothers, and maybe that's them trying to bridge that gap. Maybe they're still trying to do that. Now, another thing that was leaked was a full-on breakdown of a release calendar. Well, an estimated release calendar from 2020 for Bethesda games, the ZeniMax games. I found this incredibly interesting as well. Obviously, some of these things already came out, and some of these things didn't come out when they were supposed to come out. But this is still very interesting. These are some projects that we didn't know about. So let's dive into that. I got this over at Eurogamer, so let's take a look at it. Back in 2020, you know, Doom Eternal and DLC, we did get that. Elder Scrolls Online, Greymoor, Fallout Wastelanders, and Deathloop were planned for 2020, as long as Fallout Shelter Online. We're not even going to worry about mobile. Then in 2021, it was projected that Starfield would come out in 2021. Obviously, that didn't happen. Elder Scrolls Online expansion, Redfall, Doom Eternal DLC, Ghostwire Tokyo, Fallout Worlds, which is part of Fallout 76, and Project Hibiki. Don't know what that is. It was projected that in 2022, Indiana Jones game would come out, Oblivion Remastered would come out, Elder Scrolls Online expansion, and Starfield DLC would come out. 2023, Doom Year Zero and DLC, Project Kestrel, Elder Scrolls Online expansion, and Project Platinum. And then planned for 2024 was Elder Scrolls 6, Project Kestrel expansion, licensed IP game, whatever that means, Fallout 3 remasters, Elder Scrolls Online expansion, Ghostwire Tokyo sequel, Dishonored 3, and Doom Year Zero DLC. Now, obviously, some of these things didn't happen. I think some of these things will never happen. Let's start there. Some of the things that I think won't happen. I think things like Ghostwire Tokyo 2, I don't think that's coming. And if it does, it's not anytime soon. I think we will get Doom Year Zero. When and where, I have no idea. It has been pretty quiet for a while, so potentially. Elder Scrolls 6, we're obviously going to get at some point, but expecting that in 2024 is completely unrealistic and absolutely insane to think that that game will come out next year. If anything, we will get the Starfield DLC next year, and then like an announcement of Elder Scrolls 6 the following year, and then maybe in 2026 we'll get Elder Scrolls 6. But I think even that is optimistic at this point. I think Dishonored 3 would be super awesome, but I wouldn't expect that anytime soon either. What I do think is totally possible is the Fallout 3 remaster. I think that's totally feasible and realistic to see in the next coming year or so. I also think, there was a leaked document that said that an Oblivion remaster is possible. And I think it's totally possible that we will see that in the coming future. So all of this is super interesting. There's a bunch of random unknown projects that are being worked on, like new IPs and stuff, and I think that's great, and I hope we see some of these things very soon. I think COVID really affected a lot of this, but I also think just the natural way that games are developed affected a lot of this as well. Then the last big leak that we kind of saw from the FTC trial was the fact that we're getting an Xbox Series X and S redesign with a new controller coming in 2024. This is very fascinating. Not only did we get the leaks of this, that it's happening, but we also got like leaked pictures of it as well. So let's take a look at what the console looks like. I got this from Kotaku, so I appreciate Kotaku posting this for me. But this is Project Brooklyn here. Brooklyn will deliver 4K Gen 9 console gaming with more internal storage, faster Wi-Fi, reduced power, a more immersive controller, and a beautiful redesign that elevates the all-digital experience of the Xbox ecosystem. So that's the first thing I want to point out here, is that this thing does not have a disc tray. So that's something we will come back to in a second here. But also this thing will have a 2 terabyte internal storage. It will remain at the price of $499. It is no longer a big cube. It is now a big cylinder. Kind of looks like what we lovingly called the trash can Mac Pro back in like 2013, if you guys remember those things. We've got a USB-C port right here in the front. I think it's got more ports at the back. Something that interests me about this is, will you be able to lay it on its side? Will it come with some sort of stand so you can lay it on its side? I personally think this thing's kind of hideous compared to the Cube. I think the Cube's way cooler, but here it is. It exists. It does seem to be better, and it does seem like when these consoles come out, the Series X refresh and the Series S refresh, which we don't have a picture of, I don't believe, it does seem like they will be discontinuing the old versions of those consoles, which is fascinating to me, mainly from a physical sales sort of standpoint. Without a disc drive, and they're no longer making a console with a disc drive, physical sales just won't exist, and I think this is the final push into fully physical sales when it comes to Xbox. We also had an article this week that said that the Xbox Series S, which is an all-digital console, is 70% of all of the Xboxes out in the ecosystem right now. So most people are already diskless. And I think more people want to go diskless. I think there's some concerns to be had with just going diskless. I think the main concern with just going diskless is the fact that there will be no reason for these developers to ever put their games on sales, right? Like, they don't have to compete with used sales anymore. They don't have to compete with GameStop's putting games on sale. So I think that could become a potential issue in the future, but that's something we'll have to wait and see what happens. Obviously, when you compare it to something like Valve, that hasn't totally been the case. So maybe I'm off kilter there. Another thing that it affects slightly was the fact that Xbox has had a really good track record of being backwards compatible with things like the Xbox 360, where you could stick a disc into your Xbox Series X from the Xbox 360, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them will be able to be played on your Xbox Series X without a disc drive. That backwards compatibility is totally gone. So that is unfortunate. The only thing that I could see potentially, being a game changer is a detachable disc drive, something that you can buy as like a sort of peripheral, which would be kind of neat. It's something that I've heard Sony is kind of messing around with, and it is totally possible. I don't think it will happen though. And if it does happen, I don't think it'll be a very popular product. I can't imagine a lot of people buying this console that is discless and going out of the way and spending another $40 to $60 on some sort of disc peripheral. Because what's the point? Unless you already own a huge catalog of Xbox Series X games, and we've already seen that 70% of people who own an Xbox own the discless version. This definitely confirms to me that the next generation of consoles, at least on Xbox's side, will have no discs. It's just gone. I think this also marks the end of GameStop as we know it. Not right away, obviously. We still have these consoles that have disc drives, but GameStop has already been struggling. So what are they going to do when there are no longer discs to be bought, other than just being a retro store? And if that's the case, then their margins are going to go down significantly. I have seen that GameStop is looking into selling retro consoles and stuff, which would be great and super cool. But I don't think it's as profitable as selling the newer stuff. We also got this picture of the Sabile, which is the new Xbox controller, codenamed Sabile or Sabile. Let's take a look at it. This is also from Kotaku. Sabile, the world's best controller, now playing on a screen near you. Looks kind of similar. It has more of a glossy top finish with a grippy bottom. Sort of interesting. I don't see the appeal of that look. I think it's kind of gross looking. You could play anywhere. It streams directly to the cloud. I don't know how that works or what that means. New mobile app features. That sees paired devices and the cloud. Precision haptic feedback. VCA haptics doubles as speakers. So that's interesting. Quieter buttons and thumbsticks. So that's fantastic. That's something that I've been complaining about the Xbox controller for years now. That's why I've always preferred the Sony controller. I've always thought that the Xbox controller is just so fucking loud for no reason at all. Lift to wake. That's pretty cool. Pretty interesting. I guess it just sort of turns on as you lift it up. I don't know if that means if you lift up the controller, it turns on your Xbox. That might be kind of interesting too. New modular thumbsticks. That's super good. Improved longevity. So ultimately, I think this controller looks pretty nice. I think the look of it is kind of weird, but it did say that you will be able to change the look of it in the Xbox Workshop. And it also said that you can do something with your console itself in the Xbox Workshop. So that's sort of interesting, and I'm not sure what that looks like, but I'm sure we'll be hearing about it soon. Now that all these leaks came out, I bet Xbox is going to have some sort of showcase any minute now just to show off everything, because why not at this point? We have some reviews here from OpenCritic. So let's break those down. Payday 3 has a 68 on OpenCritic. That's pretty bad and pretty upsetting. I've heard a lot of issues with Payday 3 on its launch. I've heard that it's just buggy, it crashes a lot, not very stable, it's always online. So like, yeah, it's just subject to a lot of problems like that. Party Animals has a 76 over on OpenCritic. That's pretty decent. I've seen a lot of people playing it online. It looks pretty fun. Looks a lot like Gang Beasts, but with like a bit more gaminess going on in it. So that's cool. Mortal Kombat 1 got an 85. That's super good for Mortal Kombat. That's exciting stuff. Lies of P got an 82 on OpenCritic. I've heard a lot of positive things about Lies of P, but an 82 seems right for that game. I haven't played it, so I can't really say, but from what I hear, it's like Bloodborne, but not as good as Bloodborne. Next week in games, we've got a few games coming out. We've got Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on September 26th. We've got El Paso Elsewhere coming to Xbox Series, Xbox One, and PC on September 26th. Mineko's Night Market coming to Switch PC on September 26th. My Time at Sandrock coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch September 26th. Paleo Pines is coming to everything on September 26th. Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai is coming to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC September 28th. Sonic Frontiers The Final Horizon is coming to everything on September 28th. 28th, excuse me. Cocoon, this game looks really cool. Very excited for this one. Comes out on Xbox Series X, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on September 29th. Cypher 007 is coming to iOS on September 29th. And EA Sports FC 24 is coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on September 29th. Everyone who's here and watched this, I really appreciate you checking out the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you can give us a like or subscribe, whatever you do. That would be fantastic. You can find us on podcast services by looking up Last Week in Games on like Spotify or any other sort of podcast listening service. You can also find us on Twitch by looking up twitch.tv/lonercast. And if anyone is listening on those podcast services, you can find this show video form on YouTube by looking up Lonercast on youtube.com. I'll see you guys next week, and stay lonely, my friends.